everyone. Welcome to another episode of Jube's 2011 Audiobooks and Music. Thank you for listening.
No time to panic. Mason, please come to your room as fast as possible. Skylar mind-linked him. Mason's mind raced. Was she in trouble again?
Are you in danger, Skylar?
I don't know, Skylar answered. Mason picked up his speed as he raced back towards the pack house.
Are you alone?
No, Luna Sarah is here. But Mason, I don't think she is who she says she is. Skylar was starting to panic. Mason breathed in and told Skylar.
Act as calm as you can. Take deep breaths and don't let her see you're worried. I'm running as fast as I can.
Thank you, Skylar responded as she closed the mind link between them. Mason was confused. Something was going on. Why did Skylar feel threatened by Luna? Everyone loved her, and no one ever was sad or angry around Luna. Mason was trying to piece together the puzzle that was raging in his mind. As he was running towards the pack house, Mason felt as if he were getting further away instead of closer. Finally, after what seemed like hours, but was only moments, Mason saw the pack house. He slowed his steps as he got closer because of all the wolves outside. Mason greeted them.
Good afternoon.
Mason didn't take the time like he usually would have to talk to each one. He jogged up the steps to the porch as Alpha Jackson opened the door. Mason smiled and bowed.
Good afternoon, Alpha.
Jackson looked at him with concerned eyes.
Any news?
There are some things that we can discuss, but I need to go check on Skylar.
Mason nodded and dismissed himself. He felt that Alpha was displeased with his vague explanation, but he let Mason continue on his way. Mason took a deep breath.
Skylar, I'm at the bottom of the stairs. I will be there in a moment.
Skylar nodded. He heard Skylar respond with a soft, Mason smiled because he felt her relax. He was almost to his mates and would be able to keep Skylar and her wolves safe. Mason took the steps 2 at a time, softly. As he reached his bedroom door, Mason felt an uneasy feeling, something he had never noticed before.
I feel like our mind is clearer than it has ever been before.
Jay noted. Mason nodded his head in agreement.
Skylar, can I come in?
He asked as he reached his room. Mason held his breath until she opened the door. Mason, I didn't expect you back so soon. Blushing, Skylar said. Mason had to take a couple of deep breaths because Skylar was breathtaking.
I wanted to ask you a few questions.
Skylar stepped back and allowed Mason to walk into his bedroom. He glanced at where Luna Sarah was sitting and forced a smile.
Luna, good afternoon.
He bowed his head in respect, but Mason felt like he was going to vomit from the awful stench coming off of Luna. Beta, good afternoon. What brings you back to your room at this time of day? Luna's eyes held a hint of displeasure and anger. Mason smiled.
I wanted to ask Skylar some questions about what happened last night.
Luna nodded, but didn't make a move to leave. Okay, I'm sure she would be happy to answer them.
Luna, I mean no disrespect, but I need to question her alone.
Mason lowered his head, trying to keep his temper in check. Luna was visibly angry, but got up and walked out of the room. She slammed the door in frustration. Something was definitely off with Luna. Sarah was always so kind and loving to everyone, except for Skylar. Today, everything seemed the opposite. Skylar ran to him and threw herself into Mason's arms. She started sobbing, and he gently led her to the couch and sat her down.
Let me check and make sure she's gone.
Mason whispered so softly in Skylar's ear that if she hadn't been a werewolf, she wouldn't have understood him. Accepting each other. Mason moved slowly and went as quietly as possible towards the door. He listened for a moment, but didn't hear anything. He opened the door a crack and couldn't see anyone. Then he stepped out into the hall. The only thing present was the same stench that he smelled from the Luna. It lingered only briefly as it followed Luna Sarah up the hall. Mason walked back into the bedroom and looked at Skylar.
You're shaking. It is all going to be okay now. Trust me.
Mason said as he sat back beside her on the couch. Skylar moved over closer and closer until she was seated in Mason's lap. Yes, I know it will be now. James, you are my mate, aren't you? Mason smiled and looked into her ice-blue eyes and nodded.
Yes, I am.
Skylar giggled. I'm not human after all. I don't understand everything going on.
No, you're a wolf just like me. I need to ask if you remember anything from last night.
The last thing I remember is washing dishes after everyone in the pack house ate. I went down to have supper with the other servants. Jerica and I finished eating, washed dishes, and she asked me to go for a walk with her. As I was putting the dishes away, Skylar shook her head. I don't remember anything else. The next thing I remember is waking up in your bed, in your shirt. Mason was fuming. He wanted to know what happened, but now he thought who might have been behind the attack.
I found you in the river. I was on the midnight patrol when your scent caught me off guard. I knew it as the scent of my mate. Even though we have known each other all of our lives, it was different after you turned 18.
Wait, the river is freezing. Why would I be there? Skylar was shaking again. Mason wrapped his arms tighter around her waist and pulled her closer to him. Mason knew there were other questions that he needed to know the answers to. At this moment, though, his mind was only on holding Skylar. After a couple of moments, the sobs lessened. I need to tell you a few things I learned this morning. Skylar took a deep breath before she continued. I met my wolf, Sky. She told me that you are our mates. Jerica came in angry that I was in your room. She has always had a crush on you and wanted you as her mate. Then she just changed and was different and accepting. It was weird and very unlike her. Then she left to get some things from our room, and when she came back, her mood had changed again. It was like she was a puppet or something. Skylar took another breath and looked into Mason's eyes. She felt the move from need to desire flow through her body, but Mason looked away as she felt him getting hard against her. Mason cleared his throat and placed Skylar on the couch. He stood up and walked across the room. There was an investigation, and he needed to get to the bottom of it. Holding Skylar wasn't going to help him right now. Mason shook his head as he tried to clear it.
Did you notice anything different about Luna?
Mason questioned. Skylar blushed and knew Mason was trying to get back to why he was there. Yes, that's why I called you to come here. I didn't know who else I could trust. At first, she seemed too nice. You know she has always held me at more than arm's length and has abused me with her words. Then something shifted, and I felt this overwhelming evil come over her. I began to panic. Sky even tried to reach Luna's wolf, but there isn't one. After a while, Jerica brought up the tea. I didn't drink it. It smells different. And come to think of it, Luna didn't drink any either. She kept trying to get me to drink it. The closer she got to me, the more I smelled this awful stench. It was so strong that it burned my nose.
I know what you're talking about. I smelled it when I came in here. I don't know what to do. Alpha Jackson will not be pleased when I accuse the Luna of attempted murder. Let me call Dawn up here to test the tea. Do you want me to get Jesse to check on you again?
Mason's voice was shaking with anger and stress. He was trying to stay calm, but he knew that he needed answers. The more Mason dug, the more questions arise. James, what will happen when it comes out that we are mates? Skylar looked concerned. Mason turned and kneeled next to her.
I don't know, but I have always loved you. You are so much more than you will ever know. I have to talk to Alpha Jackson and let him know. I'm going to wait and see what else I can find out about the Luna before I bring those findings to him.
Skylar placed her hand on his face and smiled. I love you. She leaned in to kiss him, but at that moment, there was a knock on the door. Mason chuckled.
Perfect timing.
He walked over to the door and let Dawn and Jessie in. Dawn walked over to the table, not saying a word, and got to work. She poured the tea into a jar. Did you want me to dust the cookies as well? She asked no one in particular. Mason nodded.
Yes, I don't know who did this, but we need to get to the bottom of it.
You are accusing the Luna, Mason. That's serious, and I hope you are wrong, because she will be put to death for the crimes she has committed against the princess. Dawn spat out. Dawn turned on her heels and stormed out. Princess? Skylar stuttered. Who's the princess? I thought she only caused me harm. Jessie narrowed her eyes at Mason. Will you please step out of the room? She didn't give him any time to answer. Jessie knew the whole truth as well. Skylar, let's get you out of the dress and into something more comfortable. I don't know why Luna wanted you dressed so early in the day when the party isn't until this evening. Skylar nodded. But I don't have any more of my clothes here. Jessie walked to the door and spoke with Mason, but Skylar couldn't make out the words. Luna's missing. While Jessie was checking on Skylar, Mason waited outside of his room before Jessie was done. Alpha Jackson mind-linked Mason.
Is Sarah still with Skylar?
Jackson sounded like he was panicking. Mason was confused because he figured Luna had gone to tell Alpha that he had kicked her out.
No, I asked her to step out of the room while I questioned Skylar. Have you not seen her?
Jackson shouting into the mind link.
No. If I had seen her, do you think I would be asking? I can't feel her presence. It is as if she just disappeared.
I will be right there. Let me inform Jessie that I am leaving and get her to keep an eye on Skylar.
Mason rushed out, knocking softly on the door. Mason opened it a little.
I have something I need to take care of. Jessie, do you think you could stay with Skylar for a little bit?
Then Mason mind-linked Jessie.
Luna Sarah is missing, and I need Skylar to be safe.
Yes, Beta, I will keep her company. Jessie forced a smile on her face. Mason closed the door and took off down the stairs. Several wolves stood about, but no one dared to ask what was going on as Mason ran at full speed towards the Alpha's office. Reaching the office, Mason took a deep breath. Before he could knock, the office door flew open. Jackson was fuming.
Get in here now!
Mason rushed past him and just stood waiting for Jackson to say something. Jackson closed the door.
What happened?
Skylar told me something didn't seem right with Luna Sarah and asked me to come to my room. When I arrived, there was an unfamiliar smell coming from under the door. It seemed to be coming from Luna Sarah.
Mason paused, but Jackson's eyes looked wild.
I asked if she minded stepping out while I questioned Skylar. She gave me an evil look before she walked out. Luna Sarah stormed down the hall. I don't know where she went after that. I went in and talked to Skylar.
Jackson began to sob.
The last 12 years have been pouring back to me for the last hour. I don't know what is going on, but I feel free for the first time in a long time.
Mason knew that feeling. He had it himself.
What do you mean, Alpha?
I feel someone has betrayed me. And now Sarah is missing? Was she the one that betrayed me, or was she part of something else?
Jackson let out a sigh.
Skylar doesn't even know that she's my niece. I was supposed to train her and teach her how to control her powers. Skylar must choose who she wants to be. However, before I could start training, Sarah walked in and took away everything that I swore to my brother I would do. Now Sarah is missing, and Skylar was almost murdered.
Jackson took a deep breath and yelled.
Find Sarah now! I don't care if it takes you all night. We will cancel the ball until Sarah is found. I need answers, and no one is to leave or enter until she is found. Do you understand me?
Mason bowed his head, unable to back down from Jackson's alpha voice. It was painful when the alpha used it.
Yes, Alpha.
Mason raced for the door.
Davidson, Luna is missing. We need everyone to search for her. Skylar is safe, but keep that knowledge to yourself. Everyone is to look for Luna, and no one is to rest until she is found. I'm on my way to the gym. Have everyone gather there. We will go over plans and see if we can work out a schedule.
Mason mind-linked the head guard.
Yes, Beta.
Came the reply. By the time Mason arrived at the gym, everyone was waiting on him.
Everyone, listen up. Luna Sarah has gone missing. The last place we saw her was in the house, on the second floor, visiting with someone. The person she was visiting is safe. We do not know where Luna Sarah went after she left their room. Therefore, the Alpha and I will search in the house. Davidson and Marty, take your top warriors and search from the house out in every direction. Johnson and Taylor, you take the rest of the guards and warriors and search the borders inward. If you find something out of place anywhere, you are to inform me right away. We are to search until she is found. Anyone have any questions?
One of the younger guards raised his hand.
Shouldn't some of us stay in the village to watch over the women and children?
Mason thought for a moment.
I want all the women, children, and the elderly to go to the pack house. If they ask questions, tell them there is a security breach and we just want them all safe. Tyler, Duncan, Jackie, Billy, and Tommy, you will stay at the pack house and keep guard after you make sure everyone is inside. Thank you, Tyler, for bringing that up. Is there anything else that I seem to be missing?
After a moment of no one saying anything,
Let's go. Be safe and stay in pairs. We don't know what or who we are up against. Make sure always to have your partners back. Report back to your directors regularly. Davidson, Modi, Johnson, and Taylor will report back to us. As soon as I help the Alpha scour the house, I will be out helping you. Let's go. Yes, sir.
the crowds responded, and everyone was off. Mason closed his eyes and prayed to the moon goddess that the Luna wasn't behind this, and that something else had happened. He ran as fast as he could back to the pack house. Mason made his way back to his room. He didn't open the door. He just looked for clues. Mason followed the direction that the stench had went earlier. There was still a small appearance of it. He followed it to the back stairs and down into the basement. Then it was gone. Mason checked every room, and when he arrived at Skylar and Jerica's room, he was surprised and frightened by what he found. Mason took a deep breath and walked slowly towards Jerica's still body. Her heartbeat was thready and her breathing was weak.
Jesse, I need you in Skylar and Jerica's room. Jerica is hurt.
Yes, Beta. Skylar is resting right now and won't know that I am gone, Jesse replied. Skylar's dream. Skylar is fast asleep when Mason calls Jesse away. In fact, she is in a profound sleep. As Skylar sleeps, she begins to dream of a wonderful, beautiful place. As I am walking, I notice there is fog covering everything, and the ground is uneven. I continue to walk towards a bright, flaming light. I feel the pull of the flames. I look around me. The world is dark and lonely. The closer I draw to the flames, the more relaxed my mind feels. I don't know where I am or where I am headed, but I feel comfort.
Welcome, my child. I have waited a long time to meet you.
A handsome grandfather of a man stands near the fire. His eyes are the same icy blue as mine. Grandfather, I have been locked away from myself for a long time. The words are true, and as I speak them, several things come to mind. I know who I am. I know where I come from. I know I am the forbidden double-element child.
I know, my child. I have watched over you for all of your 18 years. I have tried to reach you many times, but you were always out of my arm's length. You and I will need to train fast and hard. While you are sleeping, you will learn more, because time will travel faster.
Grandfather reaches out his hands and says, "Come forth." I knew he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to my wolf. Only when my wolf came forward, there wasn't only one. There were two. On my right, my ice wolf that I had never met. She bowed before my grandfather. Her fur was so white that it appeared blue. She looked at me with eyes the same icy blue as my own and smiled. "At last we meet. My name is Zara. I will bring you peace and comfort." On my left, my fire wolf that I had learned was named Sky. When I first began to come out of the fog, she bowed before my grandfather. Her fur was so fierce that she was the color of my hair and reminded me of flames. She looked at me with eyes the color of sunflowers and smiled. "I am pleased to meet you. I will bring you strength and courage. Yet you must choose. Fire and ice are not meant to live together. We will become more of your human self that you have always known, or will you break free and become who you were born to be?" I knew my answer, but was it even an option? I looked at my grandfather and waited to see what he would tell me. He nodded his head.
You will train with each of your wolves. You will learn their strengths and weaknesses, as well as your own. You will want to quit. You will sweat and beg for answers. But in the end, the decision will be yours, and yours alone.
I took a deep breath. I was ready to start training. How do we start training? Do I get to choose I train with, and how? I now have many questions, but my grandfather only smiled.
You have never shifted, and now you will, but only in your dream state. Think of what you wish to become at this point, and see yourself as the wolf.
I took a deep breath and felt my bones changing as I became more wolf than human. Finally, I was on all fours. Both my wolves were confused. What I wanted wasn't possible. Or was it? I was the color of Zara, but my mind was that of Sky. I had taken both wolves and made them one. They snarled at each other. Grandfather held up his hand and said,
Skylar has chosen at this moment to not choose between you, but to make you both part of her. Being an ice wolf on the outside and a fire wolf on the inside will bring her enemies to attack the wrong wolf. She will not be what they expect, and this will make her stronger and smarter in the end.
I stretched and felt my wolf body and was comfortable with my decision, for the moment at least. Grandfather instructed me how to attack in wolf form. I battled both Zara and Sky separately, then together. I had an odd advantage in both situations. I had all the knowledge of both the ice and fire wolves. I knew their powers and their weaknesses after what seemed like hours. I looked at Grandfather.
You have done well for your first training session. Somehow you are further ahead than I was expecting. This is a good thing. Have a wonderful day, but remember to remain cautious. You are still in danger.
I bowed my head. Thank you. Before I leave, will my first shift in the real world be the same as it was here? He shook his head.
I don't know. You are the first of your kind.
I smiled first to Sky and then to Zara. Thank you for always being with me. We will learn to all live together in harmony. Sky smiled. I look forward to what the future will bring. Zara laughed. We can't exist together. It has never been done. She will have to choose. Right, Master? She turned to her grandfather to find that he was gone. Skylar smiled to herself, and she began her journey back to the other side of the field. Skylar awoke with a start and screamed as the feeling returned to her body. She was in Mason's bed, all alone. It was dark, and the clock said that it was a little after 3 in the morning. Skylar breathed a deep breath. Skylar mind-linked Mason. James, where are you? It is really early in the morning. What is going on? Jessie ran into the room. Skylar, are you all right? I think so, but what is going on? Skylar's voice was shaking, even though she and Mason had only accepted each other with words. Their bond was strong. I will have to let Mason inform you of what is going on, Jessie said uneasily. Mason finally mind-linked back.
Skylar, honey, you are awake. Are you all right?
Skylar could tell that Mason was worried and that he was running. But why? She didn't question him. Yes, I just awoke and you weren't here. I was just concerned.
I will be there soon.
And with that, Mason closed the mind link. Jessie smiled and looked at Skylar. You know that I know he's your mate, right? Skylar blushed. She didn't have any friends other than Jerrica. However, at the moment, Skylar wasn't sure Jerrica really was her friend. She just hoped that everything would be answered soon. Jessie, I didn't know anyone knew. I'm not only a doctor, Skylar. I am a seer. I see what happens in the future with the werewolves in our pack. Sometimes I am blocked and can't see some things. There has seemed to have been a fog for some time. I feel clearer now. However, I am only 20. I may still be coming into my powers, or they are still growing. I am learning more every day. Skylar smiled. She knew that she and Jessie were going to be good friends. Jessie, I think I need to get some more rest. Mason said he would be back soon. Jessie stood. I brought you some tea to help you sleep, so that you can heal. Skylar took the tea and drank it, and soon enough, she was sound asleep again. Only this time, she dreamed of her wedding day with James Mason, the beta of the pack. Confession time. Mason was glad that Jessie had informed him that Skylar was sleeping again. However, it bothered him that Jessie said Skylar seemed to be fighting in her sleep. Mason circled the perimeter again. There is not a single sign of where Luna Sarah had left the pack territory. Did that mean she was still somewhere close? The guards, warriors, Alpha, and he had searched every inch of the territory. They had turned every stone, checked every house, looked through every safety chamber available, yet they had found not a single trace of Luna Sarah. It was coming up at 5 o'clock. Everyone was tired and were heading home. Well, almost everyone. Alpha Jackson, Mason, Davidson, Taylor, and a couple of the youngest warriors were going to keep watch through the next few hours while the others rested. Then they would switch out for the next rank warriors and guards.
Mason, let's talk.
Jackson hung his head and started walking slowly through the snow and ice. Mason followed, but stayed silent. It was time to ask for permission for the one thing Mason knew Jackson could deny him. Jackson stopped walking and sat down on a fallen log near the riverbank.
Son, I am tired. I'm confused. I'm a failure. I can do something as simple as keeping my beautiful niece safe.
Jackson let out a sigh.
How much did your father tell you from his deathbed?
Mason knew it was time to confess a lot of things. There were secrets that Alpha Eric had shared with his father, but not Alpha Jackson.
Father told me that Skylar was your niece, Alpha Eric's firstborn daughter, that he and Luna had a forbidden union. Skylar is a prophesied child from such a union.
Jackson smiled.
Yes, that is true. I was supposed to protect and train her. I was to love her as my own child. Sarah came into our lives and I threw Skylar away.
Sobs began to fill the air around them. Jackson was broken now. He had lived the last 12 years, locked inside his own mind. It seemed the whole pack, or at least most of it, had been going through the same thing.
That's not the whole truth, Alpha. In fact, that is a lie that Alpha Eric made up to keep Skylar's true identity hidden.
Mason waited for Jackson to look at him. Jackson lifted his eyes slowly until they met Mason's.
What do you mean? Tell me this so-called truth. Why would my brother lie to me?
Mason took a deep breath, knowing that the truth would break his Alpha further, but he was supposed to tell him the truth yesterday. After everything that had happened, there was no way to confront Jackson with the truth. Finally, they were alone, and now was the time to tell the secret he had been forced to carry around for the last 5 years. His father carried the same burden for 13 years.
There is no easy way to tell you. Skylar is Melissa's daughter. When Melissa met Dustin, her maid, she was already pregnant.
Mason paused and let his words sink in. Melissa had been the love of Jackson's life. She was the Firewolves' princess and was forbidden from becoming their Luna by her father, the king. Melissa had traveled home to visit her family that spring 18 years ago, to never return to Jackson. Jackson screamed.
That can't be true. Melissa would have told me. She called me every so often to check on me and make sure I was happy. Melissa has never asked about Skylar. Why wouldn't she ask how her own daughter is doing?
Jackson cried out.
Who would keep this from me? Sarah was never able to have my children. Jessie said that she couldn't understand why. Now you tell me that I have a child for the last 18 years? I can't.
Shaking, Jackson stood.
I need to go to her now. I need to tell her how sorry I am. She needs to know the truth. She deserves to know.
Alpha, wait, please. There are a couple of more things I need to tell you.
Cautiously, Mason said. Jackson just shook his head.
No, I don't think I can bear any more right now.
Mason continued anyway.
Skylar is the forbidden child. She is both ice and firewolf. The prophecy says she will accept who she is or reject part of herself and become a demon wolf. As far as I can tell, Skylar has accepted her wolf named Sky. However, the prophecy states that there are 2 wolves, one from each element. Until she knows that there are 2 wolves and she has to choose, it may be wise not to tell her you are her father.
No, that can't be. It just can't.
Jackson was in shock.
It may not be the best time, but I need you to know, Skylar is my mate, Alpha. I won't reject her, but I won't move forward without your approval either.
Barely above a whisper, Mason confessed to Jackson. Jackson let out the loudest, most frustrated laugh Mason has ever heard.
Is there anything else? Anything at all that I don't know?
Mason nodded.
Jerica was hurt and is in the hospital. She's Skylar's best friend, but we haven't told her about Jerica. Skylar also doesn't know that the Luna is missing. We found blood all over Edward's room. Dawn is running tests to see if she can determine who it belongs to.
Mason took a deep breath.
Also, the tea that Jerica served to Luna and Skylar was tainted. Dawn is analyzing it as well. Luckily, Skylar didn't drink any. As a precautionary measure, she has the cookies as well.
Jackson's face turned green.
Oh, I need to be with my daughter now. I don't know how or if I can handle everything you have told me. Give me some time. I know you love Skylar. I need to let everything soak in.
One more thing. I received a package for you from Alpha Eric. I was supposed to give it to you yesterday before the ball. However, considering the circumstances, I didn't. I will retrieve it from my closet and bring it to you.
Mason reached out and rubbed the Alpha's back. Jackson got up.
I'm going to your room. I want to be there when my daughter wakes up. It is time that she and I had a heart-to-heart. I need to tell her everything you have told me. I know you don't want her to know the truth, but I can't keep this big of a secret from her. It is bad enough that Sarah forced me to make her into a lowly servant. I'm scared, but you will be there. Skylar will need your support and love. She might reject and hate me, but I will do everything I can to make up for it for the rest of my life.
Mason and Jackson walked towards the pack house in silence. Mason mind-linked Davidson.
Time for a shift change. Let the team know that they can get some rest. We will meet this afternoon for updates and plan a strategy for finding the Luna.
Davidson responded, tired.
Yes, Beta.
As Mason and Jackson reached the pack house, they made their way up to Mason's room. The Demon Witch Coven. Merlia takes to the treetops right outside the pack house with barely enough energy left to cloak her scent. I should have taken care of that child long before now. Marge had told me there was time, and I would grow stronger the longer I kept Skylar under my spell. I was just a fool to listen to my sister. Merlia had fled as soon as she could, but Jerica caught her leaving. The minion had somehow grown a heart in the 16 years since she had been made. Jerica was formed and left on edge, with Merlia as her conscience. When Jerica had seemed to be getting too close to the princess, Merlia stepped in and tried to forbid their relationship. However, she forced them closer together, which had worked for about 12 years. Thinking about the night before Skylar's birthday, Jerica had knocked Skylar over the head, dragging her to the riverbank where Merlia had told her to. Jerica covered the tracks as she went back to the house. Merlia started the spell that would give her power over Skylar's body, soul, and wolves, only to be interrupted by her own minion, her own creation. Jerica had jumped on Merlia's back, making her jump and throw Skylar's body into the river. The spell was slowly killing Skylar, but Jerica loved Skylar as her friend and was learning to adapt independently. When Merlia finally gained control of Jerica again, she noticed that Skylar's body had floated down the river. Her only hope at that point was to leave and go back to Jackson's bed. I just need enough energy to be able to transform into my crow form and fly over the territory border. Marge will come and get me from there. I will have to inform Mother that I have failed. She may strip me of all my powers, but living mortal will be better than continuing to pretend that I am someone I am not. I hope that Luna Sarah is still alive. There won't be any other way to get close to the pack again without her. Thinking to herself, Merla let out a soft groan. One of the guards that Merlia didn't know by name had heard the sound. She just wanted to laugh. They were too stupid to figure out that their Luna had been anything other than a wolf. Yeah, she had used the real Luna to cover her true self, but after all these years, Merlia had become weaker instead of stronger. The fact that she had to make love to the Alpha turned her stomach sour every time. Demon witches could not bear werewolf children. Their makeup was too different. Pretending to love Jackson had crushed her soul in more ways than one. When they kidnapped Sarah, they were not aware that she would be the Alpha's mate. That had just been pure luck on the part of the Demon Witch Coven. Merlia had not planned to stay when she arrived on the Snowy Range Pack land. She had planned to pull her minion out and kidnap Skylar, but that plan turned south faster than Canadian geese flying south for the winter. Marge had told her to remain in the pack and grow closer to the princess and the Alpha. It would be wise to keep up pretenses. What a bunch of garbage that had turned out to be. I had made the Alpha push Skylar away so he could discover that she was his daughter, instead of trying to raise her as my own. I wonder if that would have made a difference. Would she have trusted me? I doubt it. Merlia heard the meeting bell and expected all the guards and warriors to make their way to the gym. This was going to be her only chance. She was going to make her way across the border on foot. Marge counted the guards heading to the gym for the meeting. There was a total of 86 guards and 93 warriors. Marge had made it a point to train with them so she could learn each of their faces and names. However, today, there were more than Merla had expected. She waited for about 10 minutes to make sure there were no more guards or warriors near her. Merlia took a deep breath and leaped to the ground. She was far enough away that no one should hear her. It felt good to be back to her natural self, but it was dangerous. Merla took off towards the border. However, someone had spotted her. The white wolf with icy blue eyes stared at her, teeth bared and ready to attack. Merlia had never seen the wolf before. Most ice wolves were the same color as their hair. Not once had she met anyone in the pack with bluish-white hair. This wolf was almost as large as Jackson's. Still, Merlia couldn't place it. They rounded each other, and Merlia knew she wouldn't be able to fight or escape. She let out a cry of defeat. The white wolf snarled and lunged forward. She missed Merlia's throat by only centimeters. Before the wolf could get its bearings again, Merlia was racing off into the forest to the border. The wolf must have alerted all the guards and warriors of finding Merlia, because within seconds it felt like they were all in pursuit. I could see the border, and I could hear my sister and coven closing in. They were on their way to my rescue. I was pleased with my timing. Merlia began to laugh as she thought about everything happening right now. Merlia gained enough strength while running and shifted into her crow form. She cawed out to her coven to stop them from crossing the border. There would be time later to finish what they started. The whole coven turned and headed back to safety. The wolf pack growled out in defeat and frustration. Merlia had won this round, but she wouldn't be safe until Skylar was dead. That's when she realized that the bluish-white wolf had to be Skylar. She had found the ice wolf already. Reaching the castle an hour later, the coven landed and turned back to their human form. Merlia turned and announced, "We are running out of time if we want to stop the prophecy from coming true. It seems that Skylar has connected with her ice wolf. It is only a matter of time before she connects with her fire one as well." Merlia fell to the ground in complete exhaustion. The other members of the coven took her to her room and tended to her body. Merlia would need plenty of rest. Most likely a few days at least. Marge walked over to Mother. "Merlia believes we are too late, Mother. Skylar has connected with one of her wolves. How will we defeat her now?" Mother snickered. "Dear child, you must not lose faith. I have studied for more than 1,000 years, and I know how we will defeat Skylar. I always know when. Do not lose hope, and just take care of your dear sister." Merlia thinks she is a failure, but she has also learned so much about the princess in the last 12 years, and we will use it to our advantage. Confrontation. Skylar had slept soundly after drinking the tea from Jessie. She had dreamed of what her wedding day would be like. Somewhere in the distance, Skylar heard voices. Alpha was crying, and Mason was telling him everything was going to be okay.
Do you think she will ever forgive me?
Alpha said,
She will, and she will love you, because it was out of your control.
Mason responded. This conversation had been so out of place in her dream. Then Skylar awoke with a start at the sound of the meeting bell. It was unusual to have a meeting so early in the morning. What had happened while she was tucked away safely in Mason's room? Skylar called out to the seemingly empty room. "Hello? Is anyone here?" When she was only answered by silence, she made her way to the bathroom. She took care of everything she needed to, which included brushing her teeth. Skylar walked into the bedroom and noticed the open closet now held what few clothes she owned. She noticed new clothes for her as well. Skylar laughed out loud. She had never owned more than a few uniforms and a couple of play outfits. Skylar chose a beautiful emerald green sweater and black leggings. She grabbed the pair of black Converse that were out in the open. Skylar's stomach growls, so she decides that she needs to eat. Making her way down to the kitchen, she doesn't see anyone in the pack house. That's unusual. Even during a meeting, the servants are usually still around. Arriving at the kitchen, Skylar finds Becky washing the last of the breakfast dishes. "Good morning, Becky," Skylar says shyly. Becky turns with a huge smile on her face. "Skylar, good morning. I am so happy to see that you are doing well. I know you have not eaten anything in the last couple of days. Let me get you some bacon, sausage, eggs, toast, and hot chocolate." Skylar laughed. "Becky, I don't think I can eat all that. Some bacon and toast should be plenty." Becky heated her breakfast and turned to her. "I hear that you and I are going to be sisters." "I don't know. James is keeping his distance from me. I know I have been sleeping a lot, but I felt like something is going on that he can't or won't share with me." Becky laughed. "Mason loves you. He is taking care of the pack's business." "I heard the meeting bell. What's that all about?" Skylar questioned. Becky hesitated. "Mason and Alpha are dealing with some things. I am sure they want to be the ones to tell you." Skylar was annoyed because she was being treated like a child. This wasn't going to be how she would spend her time. "Well, will you at least tell me, where are all the servants? You aren't supposed to wash dishes. Where's Jerica?" "She has been hurt. Jerica is in the hospital under the care of Dr. Milton," Becky said. Skylar, feeling her anger rise, she stepped out of the kitchen without even eating. Walking to the front, Skylar felt herself beginning to shift. She raced out the front door, but before her feet reached the front steps, she was already on fours. At that very moment, the wind shifted directions, and Skylar caught a whiff of the stench that had been coming off the Luna. It made her throat burn and her stomach roll. Before she could think about what she was doing, Skylar raced at full force, straight to the source. Sky whined. "Skylar, this is dangerous." "Oh, let's have some fun," Zara stated. Skylar just kept moving as she kept control over her body. All at once, the most evil-looking woman was standing in front of her. Skylar recognized the shock on her face, and then the horror and confusion. "Mason, there is danger about north of the pack house." Skylar mind-linked him and closed the link. Skylar took a fighting stance and bared her teeth. She felt the ice moving within her, followed and warmed by the fire. She felt more alive than she had ever felt before. The woman turned her eyes to stare at Skylar. Those were Luna's evil eyes. Well, Skylar knew she wasn't the true Luna. The woman reminded her of the story that Jerica had told her once. "There was a demon witch that lived in a tower away from the rest of her coven. She had dark, black hair. Her eyes were black, but you could see a hint of blue in them. The witch had failed her mission and was banished to the highest tower. During that day, she cried out for someone to rescue her, but she planned her revenge on the one that had gotten away at night. No one had even remembered her name. She was tossed the scraps that the dogs would get if it weren't for her. She gathered all the dust and began to chant spells that she had made up. Then one day, the spell worked. She formed a beautiful blonde-haired toddler. The child's eyes were forest green, and her smile was crooked. The witch practiced day in and day out to control the child's motions. After about 6 months, the witch was successful and named the little girl Macy. Jerica would always get a faraway look in her eyes when she told that story. At that moment, everything came crashing back to Skylar. Jerica was Macy, the demon witch that formed her. The same witch that now stood only a foot away from Skylar. The witch began to circle Skylar. That's when the witch let out a defeated scream. Skylar took that moment to lunge at her, growling. However, at that very same moment, Skylar got a whiff of Mason rounding the house. Her mate caused her to lose focus, and she missed her target by mere centimeters. While Skylar tried to get her feet back under her, the witch took off running with the little strength she had left. Skylar panicked. She was headed for the border. As Skylar started chasing after her, she was joined and surrounded by her fellow pack members. It wasn't just the guards and warriors. Every single, healthy, able pack member had come to fight and protect their territory. Mason and Alpha stepped in front of Skylar to prevent her from following after the witch. She skidded to a stop.
She's mine! That witch has destroyed my life for long enough. I want her dead.
Skylar was growling and angry. Not waiting for either Alpha or Mason to respond, Skylar took off to the hospital. She needed to see Jerrica. Skylar wanted to confirm her suspicions that Jerrica was, in fact, the minion created by the witch. When Skylar arrived at the hospital, she shifted. Not thinking about her nakedness, she went right into the hospital. The receptionist held out a yellow dress to her to slip on. Skylar said,
Thank you.
"Will you please tell me what room Jerrica is in?" The receptionist nodded. "She's in room 251. Jerrica is not allowed any visitors." Skylar hummed.
They will let me see her.
She stormed off and headed for the stairs. She was not in any mood to wait for the elevators. After running up the flight of stairs, she arrived at the door to 251. There was a guard outside, Jimmy. At least that's what Skylar thought his name was. Skylar gave him one look, and instead of saying anything, Jimmy bowed his head. He opened the door to Jerrica's room and allowed Skylar to enter. Truth of history. Jackson looked at Mason in shock. The power rolling off of Skylar made even Alpha bow. They made their way to the pack house and shifted as they walked.
What the hell was that?
Jackson was still reeling from Skylar's power. Mason shook his head.
I don't know. I've never felt so much dominance from anyone in my whole life. To think that my own mate can make me recoil like a child, that puts a whole new fear in me.
Jackson nodded.
She's my daughter, so she has the Alpha Luna gene. However, whatever else is going on, we need to figure it out soon. I need to call Eric and see what he knows about her.
Mason lowered his head and walked up the stairs. He needed to get dressed and see if he could talk to Skylar. Walking into his room, Mason noticed the new clothing tags lying out on the couch. He smiled to himself. That meant that Skylar had at least liked part of her new clothes. Unfortunately, those were probably the same clothes that Mary was gathering from the porch. Mason decided he was going to take a shower because it had been a trying couple of days. He stepped into the shower, and while he was enjoying the hot water, his mind raced back to his conversation with Alpha last night. Jackson was shaking his head.
How can I ever make up the last 12 years? She means so much to me, even more now that I know the truth.
There is no way to get those years back, so focus on how you can help her from this point forward.
Mason sighed.
I don't know how we're going to move past the betrayal of our own Luna.
Jackson glared at him.
She wasn't really Luna. Whoever Sarah is or was, she wasn't my true mate.
Mason looked over at Skylar sleeping.
We have to protect her from now on. We need to focus on moving forward from everything that has happened. Since all of us were under some kind of mind control, we need to start piecing together what truly happened over the last 12 years. I do know that the control didn't affect our stronger emotions. The loss of my father hurt, and I still feel it now. My mom leaving the pack left an empty place in my heart, but those are things that couldn't be controlled.
I know what you mean. When Beth left the pack after Sarah arrived, I thought I would die. Beth and I had been raising Skylar as our own daughter. I wouldn't let our relationship go beyond a friendship, though, because of what happened with Melissa. I loved Beth. I loved her more than I ever loved Melissa. Even then, I couldn't go through with the possibility of finding her mate.
Jackson stared off into space. As the water turned cold, Mason was pulled back to the present. Stepping out of the shower, Mason wrapped a towel around his waist. He walked into the bedroom, and instead of getting dressed, he laid down in the bed to take a nap. While he slept, Mason dreamed of the life he and Skylar would share. They were sitting on the riverbank, watching two toddlers play nearby. Skylar smiled. "I love you, James. I am so happy that we had twins. Melissa is stronger than Donnie. It is almost comical to watch them wrestle." Mason chuckled.
Donnie will catch up and pass his sister soon, though.
"Mel is going to hurt him. You may want to pull them apart soon." Skylar laughed a full belly laugh while rubbing her pregnant stomach. As Mason stood, he heard a deep voice.
"Mason, we need to talk."
He ignored the voice and continued toward his children. The voice boomed even louder.
"Mason, we need to talk about Skylar."
Mason was frightened as he turned towards the voice. There, standing near a fire, was an older version of Alpha, except he had the same icy blue eyes as Skylar. Mason's voice shook.
Who are you, sir?
Chuckling, the older man said,
"I am Anderson. I am Jackson and Eric's father, meaning I am Skylar's grandfather."
Alpha Anderson, it is a pleasure to meet you.
Mason bowed. Anderson motioned for Mason to move closer.
"Have a seat, son. We have much to talk about."
Mason took a seat on the ground near the fire. He felt a sense of peace.
Alpha, I don't understand.
"I am visiting your dream. I know you are Skylar's mate, and you are worried about her power. Let me explain something to you. You were chosen as her mate because you are equal in power and strength. You may feel small and inferior to her, but in truth, your power is stronger than hers. Your power will help balance out hers."
Anderson smiled.
Your parents were from two different elements as well. However, no one thought of you as a threat because you are from the earth and air wolf tribes.
Mason had a deer caught in the headlight look.
What? Why didn't they ever tell me that?
Anderson gives Mason a gentle smile.
Your father was the last surviving Earth Wolf. He had fought the demon witches and watched every one of his pack members die. As the Alpha, Marcus thought he was a failure. Elizabeth, his chosen Earth mate, perished as well. After leaving the territory to find another pack, Marcus came upon a small pack of wolves.
Anderson paused to see if Mason would say anything. Mason said,
My father was an Alpha. He was the end of his line.
Mason was shocked to learn the truth, but there had to be more to the story.
That's when he met my mom?
Mason asked.
Yes, a young airwolf played near a field, and as the wind blew, your father catches her scent. His heart skipped a beat, and he walked closer to the airwolf. Tina looked up at him with the softest blue eyes. Marcus reached out, took Tina's hands in his. They went back and talked to her father. He wasn't pleased with their union, since they were from different element tribes, but he decided to trust fate.
The knock on the door caused Mason to awake.
Come in.
Sleepily, Mason responded. Then he realized he was still just wrapped in a towel. Jackson opened the door.
Mason, Skylar is at the hospital. We need to get to her. Jimmy informed me that he couldn't keep her out of Jerica's room. Her power was just too much.
Mason raised from the bed and went to his drawer to grab his boxers and pulled them on as Jackson stepped back out of the room. He dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt. Mason decided to pick out some clothes for Skylar to wear. He knew the hospital kept clothes in storage for moments when wolves appeared naked. It was a common occurrence.
Mason headed out the door and found Jackson waiting for him on the pack house porch. Truth and Dreams. Jerica was hooked up to several machines. There was a tube down her throat, IVs in her both hands, and a tube running through her nose. Skylar looked at her friend and saw the bandage around her throat. How had anyone hurt her? Jerica, I don't know if you can hear me, but I love you. I want to protect you and keep you safe. I am so sorry that I couldn't do that. Who did this to you? Skylar was sobbing by this point. She sat down next to the hospital bed and just watched Jessica for a few minutes. There came a soft knock on the door. Skylar looked back to see Dr. Melton.
Skylar, it's so good to see you. Jerica hasn't had many visitors, and I know you two were close.
Skylar nodded. What happened to her? Dr. Melton's eyes clouded over.
Jerica's throat was cut, but whoever did it didn't cut very deep. Just enough for her to lose conscience. However, there was also a huge contusion on the back of her head. That may have been what knocked her out. We've been doing tests to check on her chemical makeup. We aren't sure what she is.
Dr. Melton looked down. He wasn't supposed to tell Skylar everything, but he could not keep himself from doing so. She was made from dust, guts of rats, scraps of food, and other trash. The demon witch who had taken on the form of Lunacera, she created Jerica and left her here when I was 2. She used her powers to control her and find out information about me. Skylar spoke with venom in her voice. Somewhere along the way, Jerica started to evolve from a minion into a real person. I saw her fight the emotions being forced on her. She and I truly became friends. Dr. Melton nodded.
That explains a few things. We have never come across a creature like her before. However, a neighboring pack has, and we will contact them for ways to help Jerica. Do you think the witch still has any control over her?
Skylar shook her head. No, I think that's why she tried to kill Jerica. She knows that she can reveal important information about the Witch Coven. The demon witch tried to prevent that by taking her life. I am so grateful that she was found. Skylar's voice was monotone and uninterested in the words she spoke. Leave us, Doctor. I will stay by her side while you seek assistance. With that, Dr. Melton had no choice but to leave Skylar and Jerica alone once again. Skylar prayed to the moon goddess that her best friend would be okay. She didn't know what would happen to Jerica now that Dr. Melton knew the truth. A knock on the door had Skylar jumping. She didn't have to turn to know that it was Mason, but she also felt Alpha Jackson's presence. Yes, come in. Skylar's words came out strangled as she fought to keep control. However, she failed and stood, wrapping her arms around Mason's neck and sobbed.
It is going to be okay. We are going to find out how to help her.
Mason's voice was soothing and gentle. Skylar just nodded. She raised her head and looked over at Alpha Jackson. Dad, I think we need to talk. Jackson was taken back by what Skylar had just called him. He looked at Mason, who was shaking his head.
Who told you?
That's a long story, Skylar chuckled. Mason smiled then, and he already knew the answer.
Alpha Anderson did, didn't he?
Skylar smiled. Yes, Grandfather told me. How did you know?
I met him a couple of hours ago. He told me some, interesting things. I can't wait for us to share our visits with him with each other.
Mason said with a smile. They both looked over at Jackson and saw that all the blood had left his face. He looked like he was either going to pass out or throw up.
Dad? My dad? You both have met him?
Skylar and Mason both nodded. They moved to his side and helped Jackson sit in the chair.
But my mom raised Eric and me alone. I've never even met him. He was murdered by my uncle when we were too young to remember him. Mom left the Ice Tribe territory and
took us south to the Fire Tribe.
Jackson waited a moment before he continued.
I don't understand.
Skylar kneeled next to him. Grandfather has been training me in my dream state. He is teaching me about my powers and how they will evolve as I get stronger. He told me that you were my father, and a woman named Melissa tried to keep the truth from you. However, you know the truth now. She is the princess of the Fire Tribe. Your union was forbidden, and she hid the truth of her pregnancy. Uncle Eric and Aunt Lisa claimed I was their daughter to keep me safe. However, the demon witches found me anyway. Did you know Jericho was only one of about 500 minions created and placed around the world?
We know this is a lot to take in, Alpha. We will wait until we all return to the pack house to explain everything else.
Smiling, Mason said. Jackson just shook his head.
I don't understand anything. I was coming here to talk to you, Skylar, about everything going on with Jerica. And now you are telling me things that I should have told you.
Before anything else could be said, Dr. Melton knocked on the door and entered.
I contacted Alpha 80 from the Northern Icefall Wolf Pack. The minion that they came across, she wasn't as developed as Jerica is. The girl they called, Emily didn't have as many organs or as much of a brain. She was unable to process information. She stopped functioning about 3 days ago. When they got her to the hospital, she had already started to deteriorate. They didn't even have time to do anything other than an X-ray. I have those films, if you wish to view them.
Everyone just stood in shock. Finally, Skylar spoke up. Yes, I want to see them.
Right this way.
Dr. Melton said as he turned to go. Skylar looked over at Jerica one last time. As they all walked into the hallway, they heard a moan. Skylar raced back to Jessica's side as her eyes fluttered open. It's okay, it's okay. We are going to help, however we can. You are my sister, my best friend. I couldn't do anything without you. Whispering, Skylar tried to assure Jerica. Jerica just shook her head as tears formed in her eyes. She tried to speak, but the tube down her throat kept her from doing so. Shh, we'll get the doctor to come to remove the tube. You are safe, and I promise you, everything is going to be okay. Skylar squeezed Jerica's hands in hers. We know what you were, but you are so much more than that now. Skylar turned to call out for help to find Alpha Jackson, Mason, and Dr. Melton, all standing behind her. Dr. Melton moved to Jerica's bedside.
I'm going to need to ask them to leave the room while I remove the endotracheal tube from your throat. Is that okay? Gentlemen, would you mind please, waiting outside?
Jerica's eyes went wide as they found Skylar's. She shook her head and lifted her hand and held it out to Skylar. She needed support and wanted Skylar to stay with her. Skylar looked at Dr. Melton, and he smiled. Jackson and Mason moved to the hallway. Dr. Melton told Jerica what would happen and asked her to stay calm. Tears welled up in her eyes again, and she squeezed Skylar's. Skylar told Dr. Mason, She's ready. After a few minutes, Jackson and Mason were permitted into the room. They waited, but Jerica just hugged and cried on Skylar's shoulder. The Witch's History. Jerica pulls back. I don't know how Merla was ever able to keep the spell going so long, unless she gained more power as she stayed hidden. They all looked at Jerica confused. Who's Merlia? Skylar finally asked. Oh, you told me you knew who I was and everything. I guess I just figured that you knew who Merlia was. She is my mother, I guess you could say. She is the one that created me. Then she pulled other bodies out of me. Jerica struggled to find the words to explain. She would cut off my hand and form a whole body from it. Then she would cut off a foot or a chunk out of my side. She would heal me with some potion or something.
I always had to drink that stuff anyway to keep myself healthy. At least that's what Merlia would tell me. She created a lot more minions from my body parts. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like they have all returned to me. That's why she tried to kill me, because she had failed her mission. Her mother would be displeased to find that I am still alive. Jackson and Mason exchanged confused looks. Skylar just held on to Jerrica and was trying to encourage her. Mason noticed a slight glow that radiated off of Skylar and enveloped Jerrica like a hug. It seemed that neither of them was aware of what was going on. Jerrica looked at Skylar. I want to tell you everything that I can remember before it is taken away. Well, if it is taken. I know the whole story of the witches. Cordelia and Cassandra are of the oldest witches. The story goes something like this. Jerrica got a faraway look in her eyes. Cordelia and Cassandra are sisters. They were best friends from the time Cassandra was born. Cordelia was 2 at the time of her birth, but she helped her mother. Cordelia had beautiful black velvet hair, the darkest chocolate eyes you could imagine, and a tan complexion. However, Cassandra was quite the opposite. Cassandra's hair was golden blonde. She had sparkling blue eyes and a very pale complexion. The girls were inseparable until Cordelia reached 14, the age to begin her training. She tried to call upon the earth for her powers, but nothing happened. Mother had told her not to worry, so a week passed. She tried again, but still nothing. Cassandra, being 2 years younger at the age of 12, just mimicking her big sister, tried, and the earth answered her. Cordelia didn't see that Cassandra had come into her powers early. However, Mother saw and was concerned. Cordelia called on the water, the air, and even the fire. Yet nothing seemed to work for her. Mother watched from close by as Cassandra called upon each of them and was answered. Cordelia began to think she didn't have any powers, so she started studying alchemy. With each new recipe, she learned new things and was able to get the elements to bend to her will. Cordelia was pleased with herself, and Mother praised her for her determination. Still, Mother was worried about Cassandra coming into her powers early. No one had been able to control all of the elements. In all the history of their ancestry, each person either controlled one element or became an alchemist. There was never even a prophecy of such a child ever being born. Mother asked Father how this was possible and what that meant for them. Father was just as confused as Mother. Mother tried to discourage Cassandra from using her powers. Mother would say, "Don't use your powers, because we don't want to upset Cordelia, now do we?" Cassandra would respond, "No, Mother." However, when Cassandra was alone, she would disobey Mother's wish. One day, not long after Cassandra's 14th birthday, Cordelia asked her to try out her powers. Cassandra was able to form playmates out of each element. Cordelia just watched and admired her sister at first. Then she asked her, "How were you able to call on all the elements? That has never been done before. You just turned 14. How did you do that without any training? I know Mother hasn't trained you because she has been training me." Cassandra looked up guilty and frightened as Mother came up behind Cordelia. Mother smiles. "She is a quick learner, isn't she?" Mother's voice was full of her disappointment. "Now, Cordelia, don't you think it is time to go practice your alchemy? You are doing so well in your studies." Cordelia turned and glared at Cassandra as she walked off. She hid nearby in a row of bushes while Mother talked to her sister. "Cassandra, I told you not to practice your powers. How long have you been using them?" Mother asked with as much venom as possible. Cassandra looked down at the ground.
Every day since I learned that I had them, I just have always gone further into the forest. Today, Cordelia asked me why I wasn't trying to find out what my powers were. I just shrugged my shoulders. But then she challenged me to try to call upon the elements, so I did.
Upon hearing that Cassandra already knew about her powers, Cordelia became furious. How could her sister already have her powers? And active powers at that? She was stuck being an alchemist and depending on potions and powders for her powers. Cordelia was going to seek revenge on her sister and her mother. Cassandra knew that her mother was only worried about Cordelia's feelings and tried to protect them both. But she didn't know how to deal with such displeasure. She didn't understand why she needed to hide who she was born to be. Cordelia ran away from home that very night. She left everything that she knew. Upon coming to a nearby village, Cordelia sought refuge. She told the elder that she feared for her life and her family sought to kill her. This wasn't true, but Cordelia refused to go back to her home. The elder took young Cordelia under her wing. All the villagers were a different species, but looked the same on the outside. While Cassandra was allowed to freely practice her powers and learn how to control them now that Cordelia was gone, she missed her sister dearly. Cassandra called upon the air to search for Cordelia. However, it returned without an answer. She then called upon the earth. Still, no answer returned to Cassandra. She called upon the fire and the water, but no signs of her sister were revealed. Cordelia had learned to cloak herself from her birth family. She learned many things from the elder of her new village. Cordelia didn't learn what they were until she was married to the elder's son, and with child. Cordelia was pleased that her child was half witch and half demon. This would bring about the power that Cordelia sought. Cassandra learned that with her powers, she could create lasting beings. Therefore, she created males and females of each element. The fire wolves, the ice wolves, the air wolves, and the earth wolves lived with Cassandra in harmony. She learned how to get them to transform into human form. It was a blessing for her, and she was pleased with her work. As years passed, she still longed for her sister. Cassandra would send out the wolves in search of Cordelia, and they would come back empty-handed. After several years, the wolves began to mate and multiply. This pleased Cassandra very much. She loved to watch the pups grow and learn to control their element, learning how to shift from wolf to human and vice versa. Cordelia learned of these creators and decided that she would curse them so they couldn't live in harmony again. So, one night, while everyone in the natural witch village slept, Cordelia snuck into her sister's home and spread a powder of corruption. Only the spell backfired, and the elemental wolves turned on her. But she was able to escape by turning herself into a crow and flying out of the roof of her sister's house. Jerica's eyes glassed over, and she passed out. Skylar called for the doctor. Dr. Melton said,
She used all of her energy to tell you the tale. She is just weak and resting.
He smiled at everyone in the room.
I would like to ask you to leave so she can rest. It seems you all need to do the same.
Jackson, Mason, and Skylar made their way back to the pack house.
We will rest for now, and tomorrow we will talk some more.
Jackson smiled at Mason and Skylar. Good night, Alf. Dad, Skylar said with a soft smile.
I don't know if I could ever get used to that.
Jackson chuckled. Mason clapped Alpha on the back.
Good night, Alpha.
James, I think it's time you call me Jackson.
Alpha leaned over and hugged Skylar, and then Mason.
I want you to know you have my blessing.
Finally, family.
Okay.
As the sun dips low, painting skies of gold, in this quiet moment, stories unfold up on the rooftop, feeling the breeze. Life's gentle whispers bring me to my knees. The world below fades, just a distant hum, embracing each heartbeat to the sunset's drum. Watch the sunset, let your worries go. Life's beautiful canvas in a fiery glow. Each shade a reminder of laughter and tears. In the hush of twilight, we conquer our fears. Swirl like dreams, horizons ignite. For a fleeting hour, everything feels right. Sipping on memories, sweet as wine. Finding joy and stillness in this space divine. Simple pleasures being like stars in a night. Grateful for these moments, holding them tight. Let your worries go. Life's beautiful canvas in a fiery glow. Each shade a reminder of laughter and tears. In the hush of twilight, we conquer our fears. So here on this rooftop, I embrace the light. In the glow of the sunset, everything feels right. Trials and the tears, I learned to pray. Each moment a struggle, yet hope in my heart. With faith as my compass, I made a new start. Strength from above, guiding my stride. Oh, this year has shaped me, forged from the fire. With grace in my spirit and dreams to inspire. No chains can bind me, I'm breaking free. With God by my side, I am all I can be. The storms they raged, but I stood my ground. With every setback, new strength I found. In the silence of night, I whispered his name. From ashes I rose unscathed by the flame. With courage renewed, I will not fall. This year has shaped me, forged from the fire. With grace in my spirit and dreams to inspire. No chains can bind me, I'm breaking free. me, forged from the fire, with grace in my spirit and dreams to inspire. No chains can bind me, I'm breaking free. With God by my side, I am all I can be. A warrior risen, I stand tall and proud. In faith's embrace, I will shout it aloud. A warrior risen, I stand tall and proud. A warrior risen, I stand tall and proud. In faith's embrace, I will shout it loud. A warrior risen, I stand tall and proud.